go. Hey, it's Maria with another episode of the Everyday Heroine. Today we have Mindi Rosser as a guest on our show. Hey, Mindi.
Hey, Maria, so excited.
You have been invited to the show because you are an everyday heroine. I met you inside a networking community and I immediately had to know the bubbly, positive, and energetic LinkedIn expert with the dreads. I was an instant fan because if I was going to up my game on the professionals social media platform, it was going to be from someone like Mindi. You are someone who can instantly take away the seriousness of the business world while making serious connections with major business owners. You are an empowered mom, a regular surfer, and a badass B2B businesswoman. Oh, and by the way, Mindi has a super supportive partner as a husband who delivers inspiring quotes on the regular. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's so exciting to be here. Thanks, Maria.
Yeah, good to have you here on the show. Can you share the story with our audience of how you became a LinkedIn expert?
Sure. So it kind of happened in a roundabout way. I think as a lot of things do, especially as entrepreneurs, I was working in a 9 to 5 job. So I was doing, the social media agency thing. I was really looking to get my dream job at the time, which I was like, oh, if I could just get a 6-figure job in San Francisco at a startup, I'd be so excited. So I decided from that point, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to use LinkedIn because not many people at that time were really using LinkedIn. It was more of a place to kind of put your resume. And it really wasn't like the vibrant platform that it is today. So I decided to start reaching out to companies that I wanted to work for. I would update my resume every day. I would update my profile based on the job I was applying for. So I really got into like the profile portion of it. And then after I submitted it, I thought, I wonder if I reached out to the people that I think are hiring for this job. Like I just kind of dug around the companies to figure out who was probably hiring for this role or one of the decision makers and started reaching out to them on LinkedIn. Like, hey, I just sent my resume in. I just wanted to make sure you saw it. Da, 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 da. So I did it in a very personal way. And back then it was not very popular to do that. So it was something that was unique and actually got their attention. So I did end up landing my dream job very quickly within like 30 days of my challenge to myself. And the dream job was great, but something was missing. I found myself wanting to spend more time on social media, especially when it came to LinkedIn and really wanting to use that platform. I also found that like a lot of my colleagues and buddies were like, hey, how'd you get your dream job? Like, I want to get mine too. Can you help me with my profile? Maybe a little bit of the resume. Like, how did you do that outreach? So I started getting asked a lot of questions on the social media front, and I found that I wanted to pursue that much more than I wanted to do like the content marketing role at this startup. So I had to make a choice. I was pregnant with my first baby. And so it was like the perfect time. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna
Loaded
go for
on.
this. Yeah, I know, loaded on. I'm gonna just like go for this LinkedIn thing and let's like see where it leads. It also included some other social media stuff, but LinkedIn was really like the bread and butter and really what I enjoyed the most. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed and I decided to, go as a consultant with that company, stayed on for some months. They kind of transitioned to a new marketing person. It worked out great for them. And then I was able to transition full time to being like a freelancer and really working in social media and specializing in LinkedIn. So it's kind of like that roundabout way. And it's like sometimes you don't know exactly what you want until you try it. And so for me, LinkedIn was like, oh, I tried it and I was hooked.
That is so cool. And I love how you're like roundabout way, but you're talking about like landing your dream job and then kind of having this dream transition toward dream career or dream business. Wow, you say it so effortlessly. No wonder why I gravitated. You have this energy like, man, anything's possible and let's just go do it.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. I feel like sometimes like there's one side of me that is very like strategic and like very linear and like everything fits into a
LinkedIn.
project. Yes, like other side of me that is like, the little more on the woo-woo where it's like, oh, let's explore. And like sometimes I will dabble in things and like see where it leads. And if it really opens a door really wide, I'll walk through it. If not, then I will say, okay, that's a sign to just kind of stay put where I am and don't go chasing shiny objects. But I think it's kind of like this little test. And so I wasn't quite sure with like LinkedIn and freelancing, but I'm just an entrepreneur at heart. I had to be doing my own thing.
Yeah. Well, I love the guidelines too. Like, doors wide open. So let's go. And when you have that sense that the door's not wide open, maybe a little bit more caution. Those are good tips.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference too. I think it saved me from making a lot of very poor decisions because we've all made our share of poor decisions. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just part of the process. And I think it's okay when you make those, but then it's kind of like learning how to test the waters moving forward. Like, okay, can I test this idea before going all in? Because I tend to jump like, it's like look before you leap. I tend to leap before I look sometimes. It's like this process. Okay, let's test this. Let's see where it goes and then move forward or pause and stay put.
Maybe good in the surfing world.
Yeah.
What has becoming a business person or vice versa helped you in surfing, or surfing helped you in business?
Oh, now that's a fun question. I never get asked that. So I think they both work really well together. And most people kind of think of when they think of a surfer, they think of like a beach bum, like somebody that just kind of like paddles around in the water all the time and just catches waves. I think something I have learned from surfing is that it is extremely strategic. And the people who do it well, first of all, they have a ton of grit. So you have to have a lot of grit because you cannot get good at surfing within like a few sessions. Like some sports you can learn and pick up pretty easily. Surfing is one of the toughest things I have ever tried to learn. And it takes so much time and practice. So I think the persistence and the grit, it's like when you see a surfer and they can surf well, just realize they're not a bum. Like they have spent a lot of time in the water. They are very strategic and it requires like every single move that you make, like when you are trying to catch a wave, just to catch a wave, there's probably about, I would say a dozen to 2 dozen decisions that you're making in that period of time just to get in position to catch the wave. And then it's like when you're on the wave, you're like, okay, which direction? There's all this nuance. So every single wave that a surfer catches, there's at least a few dozen decisions that they're making in the moment. And it's very similar to, I think, businesses, especially those of us who are like entrepreneurs, everyday heroines, people that are really trying to make an impact. It may look like we're just doing one thing, but there's probably like dozens, maybe hundreds of decisions that go into that one thing to actually make it possible. So I think it's like there's this level of respect that I think I have for servers, a level of respect that I have for business people and everyday heroines, because we only see that really cool wave. We see that really neat maneuver that they do, but we don't realize everything that goes into it, all the decision making that goes into it, all of the practice and the grit and all that behind the scenes. So I think there's this beautiful relevance, I think, and there's like this synergy between the two. And so I feel really grateful that I get to do both because it's like when I'm in the water, it's like I still get to practice strategy and decision making, but it's different and it gives me rejuvenated and I take that back to my business and then I'm able to kind of exercise similar muscles, but in a different way. So it's like I get to do both just about every day, which is pretty amazing, I would say.
That is amazing. And let me tell you, that was brilliant. So like I can feel that excitement on every inch of my skin right now from that whole download. I love the word grit because and everything that you said, even working, as a woman in a male dominated industry, a lot of women in STEM fields, that's what we're doing. We're doing a lot of strategy. It does take a lot of grit. You can't just think that you're going to show up and things are going to be perfect, especially when we're solving some very mentally taxing, long-term problems.
Mhm.
They're definitely, I love the grit. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was a pretty good perspective. So Mindi, let's take this a bit deeper. We are talking strategy and decision making in surfing as it relates to business. Can you step me through your strategy and decision making to enter the water for the first time when going surfing?
Yeah, okay. So getting into the water for the first time, I feel like that part is really scary, especially if you are not accustomed to swimming. Like me, I'm not a swimmer. So for surfing for me was actually quite terrifying. Like just getting in the water because I'm like, if I lose my board, I'm not gonna be able to make it back, or I'm like worried how deep the water is. So yes, there's a lot of fear, I think, for those of us who are like a little bit shaky in that department. But then there's also that excitement. So I think you like see these waves and bumps and you're like, ooh, I wonder what that will do. So I think getting into the water for the first time on, especially on a surfboard, you don't have your balance. So that's one of the big things. Like when you're trying to get, even just to get in the right position on the board, you're kind of like wiggling and maneuvering and like your feet start flopping and flailing behind you. You're not sure where your arms are supposed to be, where your torso is supposed to be. So it's kind of funny to watch somebody getting on a board for the first time. But the feeling I think is like there's this sense of uncomfortability. You kind of lose your balance a bit, but then you get it. So I would say probably about like 10, 20 paddle strokes like in the water on the board, you start to go, oh, okay, this is how it feels. You paddle over a few waves at first, like you see waves, even if they're just like a foot tall, you're like, oh, you have this fear, but you go over them. And so I think even just those first few strokes are important. And then getting over the first few waves and figuring out where the channel is. So there's a channel that you're trying to paddle in to get around the waves. So like the waves are coming at you. And then to the side of the wave where the wave isn't breaking, that's called the channel. And so you're looking to go into that channel, and the channel is the safe zone.
Oh,
So as long as you paddle to the channel, that's like the thing,
important.
paddle to the channel, paddle to the channel, then
Very
you're not going to
important.
get waves smashing on your head. So yeah, so there's a lot of feeling, I think, for the first time, but it's like you also have this like really incredible excitement and anticipation that is really hard to describe unless you've experienced it.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like business at first as
It's
well.
very much like business where you're like, oh, I don't know, this is exciting. Like I see people out there having fun. I see people out there doing business. I see people out there, riding waves in business, and you want to do it too. So I think there's this sense of like, well, I see other people doing it. I see some other beginners because like when you are going out for the first time, they'll take you to, you go to with a surf instructor to a good spot that's safe
Oh.
and so you see other beginners like you out there doing the thing. And so it's a little less scary than, you're not going to a wave like Pipeline or something where you're going to
Right.
go
The
over
real
the falls and get smashed into the reef.
kind of above your level of
Your skill.
skill or expertise, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you step me through catching a more challenging wave once you've got that experience and you're in the water and the strategy and decision making that may go along with it?
So catching a challenging wave, I would say, especially if you are a beginner and you're kind of trying to move towards that like advanced beginner and intermediate stage with catching waves, the goal is to catch what we call a green wave. So basically it's like you see a wall of wave and it hasn't broken, so you don't see any white water yet. So white water, it's easy to catch. Like if you're right in front of the white water, the bubbles will carry you. You're good. So as a beginner, you catch the bubbles. They're great. But as somebody who's trying to progress, you're looking for that green wall. So I call it, it's like, it's the green wall. And you're trying to catch it before it starts breaking or right as it's breaking. So there's a strategy in timing. And like you have to watch, I would say watching waves is the
Huh.
biggest key to getting good at surfing. So the strategy that I have, like especially with my husband, because we go out together, but we have kids. So one of us is surfing, the other is on the beach. So the person who's on the beach is watching waves for about an hour while the other person is surfing. So the person who goes first does not have the advantage because the person on the beach has an hour of wave watching. So I usually get the wave watching. So
Oh,
I go surfing second. So that's my strategy is you watch the waves. Like, so before you even go out, you know exactly, okay, where are the green walls forming? Where should I be positioned to catch them? Because you get to watch because we go to crowded spots. They're not spots where there are no people. So we get to see the line, what we call the lineup. So that's how people are lining up in the water. And you get to see where they're catching and who's catching the best, longest waves. So you're determining how good the wave is by how many maneuvers people can do on the wave. So that's the strategy is like you have to watch waves. So as a beginner, watch waves. And I spend like my goal is to get 10,000 hours of wave watching in. I think I'm pretty close. So
wave
it's like
watching.
Wave watching. So I watch waves all the time. I watch waves on my phone, like they have surf cams. So I like as I'm stretching and doing a yoga routine, I will also have just like the wave cams
Like
at my
way
favorite surfing
before.
spots. Yeah, and just watch waves, because once you understand
Just,
the ocean, yeah, once you
ah,
understand the ocean, that is the key to surfing. Like people think, oh, it's about the maneuvers, it's about being athletic, it's about being flexible. Actually, more of it is understanding the water and the ocean. So if you don't
yeah,
understand the ocean, you're not going to know how to position to catch. And you dance with the ocean, you dance with the energy that's in the water.
cool. And every day's different.
That's the beauty.
Or
It's not a
spot
wave
every
pool.
day and spot.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's why you had to get so good all the time because you're really honing that sense of even what you're interpreting through that visual cue.
It is very true. And you can equate that to business. Like every business model is different. Like
Every
whether you
social
are going
media platform is
every
different.
social, yes, everything is different and you have to adapt to the conditions. And I think that's the fun of surfing though. That's what keeps it interesting. And I think that's the same with business. It's always changing. So like even if you go to the same spot, every day is different. Like some days you'll go there and you're like, oh my God, I'm not getting in the water. It's like
Oh,
10, 15-foot waves. Like I'd like to see a pro on that wave, but there's no way that that's above my skill level. So it's just like every day is just so different. And then you adapt your board, you adapt your equipment, your strategy, even what you wear based on the conditions. Because some days you do need to be safe. If you're going to go in very challenging surf, you need to have like a floaty vest or, some protection. Some people will wear padded gear, more of a wetsuit to protect you from the reef. So it just depends. And you're always, always changing, but you have to pay attention. I think that's the key is you're paying attention to what's changing, what's evolving.
very interesting. All right. One more question with the surfing to business. Can you finally step me through your strategy and decision making to leave the water after a particularly great session of surfing?
That is actually a really excellent question and a fun one. I think the feeling I had, like it happened a couple of weeks ago, actually. I had probably rode the best wave I've ever ridden. And yeah, if people look on the camps like, oh, it's not that big, it's not that impressive, but it was how I rode the wave. So there are all these skills that you're trying to work on, like what's your takeoff like? How vertical are you going on the wave? Like how much speed are you getting? Are you making it past the whitewater? Are you doing the bottom turn? What are you doing in each section of the wave? So you view the wave in sections as it unfolds. And so there's all these little decisions that pop in your brain with the section in front. What can I do with that? What can I do with that? What can I do with that? So it's super fun. So after riding that wave, I think the part of coming in, like you just like raise your hands. Like for me, when I ride a good wave, especially if I land well, like afterwards, I'm like land, I'm like, yeah, like this, look like I just won the Olympics or something.
Celebration.
Yeah, and like I hope like if Jason's on the beach, I like hope he's watching and like wave at him. So I think for me, it's like celebrate. So I think for me, it's like this really celebratory thing. And coming in, I tend to actually, if I surf a really good wave, it's near the end of my session, even if I have a few minutes left, I actually will paddle in. It's a part of the strategy because you don't want to catch, after riding something really, really good and having that positive experience, you need to celebrate that moment and you need to like be present. And I think if you're like, oh, I'll catch another one and you lose it, you
Yeah.
lose that last wave. So for me, it's like you want to end, especially if you have some days you just don't have a good session, but if you end on a good wave, end it there, even if it's a little early. And then the paddle in it's very strategic and it's very calming, I would say. So you're coming off this high of riding some good waves or a good session, and there's like in your posture, like they call it like the banana. It's kind of like the reverse banana. Like you have to hold your
Oh,
shoulders back to paddle the board.
okay.
And so I think if you have a good session, you're like very tall. If you have not
Oh,
had a good session, you may be a little slumped over
like tall
and
and
coming in.
proud.
Yeah. And but then just the way that you exit the water too, there's this sense of confidence. I would say there's a sense of confidence, triumph, and celebration. And it's really empowering to come out of the water after a great session. You're like, and you reflect. I do a lot of reflection on my paddle back in. It usually takes like 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how far the waves are out from the beach to get back in. So I have 3 to 5 minutes to just really like replay the wave. And I replay it
Yeah.
over and over again. And like, what did I do in each section? How can I replicate that? Because I feel like that process and the repetition is critical. So super fun.
That couldn't be any more perfect because I do teach 5 natural steps to advancement. And oddly enough, step number 5 is celebrate. So you spoke perfectly to that.
I Awesome. Our brains are in sync.
That's right. Thank you for the strategy and decision making as it relates to surfing and business.
Good.
So it certainly leads us into the 7 characteristics of an everyday heroine. And one is, you must be a real human person, not a fictional character. Certainly we have you live on the podcast. So you're obviously a human person, but the question is, who is your favorite, maybe fictional superheroine?
Oh, Wonder Woman. That's like for sure. It's definitely Wonder Woman. Like every time that we have like Halloween comes around, my kids are like, "Are you dressing up like Wonder Woman?"
The kids say that. That's priceless.
I love muscles. I love like her
Oh yeah.
powerful, it's like a lot of that. I think she has a blend of masculine and feminine energy that is so attractive, and like it's
Graceful.
just yeah, and it's graceful, but it's powerful. Like I don't think she's diminished in any way. Like sometimes we see like princesses and such, and it's a little
Yeah.
too much. Like I like
Yeah.
to see a blend of a woman that is very that can step into all of those different roles. And I think as a heroine, I think Wonder Woman is just amazing.
Yeah. Totally agreed. And there's one thing that, I've watched I'll say I think it's the 2017 version
Mhm.
of Wonder Woman. One thing that really stood out to me and I started to really want to digest is there's something about a superheroine that will run into the fight instead of run away. So I think like you're saying, there is the grace, but the strength that goes around along with it, not to be discouraged. So
Yeah, and that confidence too. I think just like that confidence and it's like you've been here, you've done this before, you can do hard things. And I think that mentality, like when we take that to any area of our life, it's like we can do hard things. We may whether it's learning something new, influencing a decision maker within our organizations, selling something, making a deal, working on a program or a course. It's like that mentality is just it's very powerful.
yeah. Yeah. Cool. Love it. So 2 is she goes against the status quo to make the world a better place. So what would that mean for you?
I was gonna say, I always think outside the box. Like you put a box around me, I'm like, how can I get outside of it? Like what's it like
Ah,
out here?
perfect. Yeah,
So
regardless.
for regardless, like, and it doesn't matter. Like maybe it's a great box, maybe it's, still fantastic, and most people like being inside the box. But to me, like the status quo, I've always felt myself challenging it and just like assumptions. Like even growing up is like assumptions that were the leaders and the teachers had in my organization. It's just like I was always challenging and questioning. And I feel like living outside of the status quo, you're always asking questions that lead you deeper and deeper into knowing more, I think, about yourself, knowing more about who you are as a human, how you can contribute to the world. And I think to me, it's about understanding that and really going deep within yourself to figure out what gifts do I have to give to the world? Like, how can I make the world a better place? And sometimes for people that is inside of an organization, it's like some people are making a huge impact and they are able to. I am in awe of the people that can work inside of an organization, play that political game, and make a huge impact on the outside. And that is their way to make the world a better place. So I think each of us are different. For me, I'm an entrepreneur and like I have tried to fit into organizations and I just don't fit. Like
Yeah.
I'm always running against barriers and it's like, okay, Mindy, you should just fire yourself and, go do your own thing. You work better that way. And so for me, it's kind of like coming at it from the perspective of creating a lifestyle by design and what does that look like and empowering other people to do the same. So if they find themselves like feeling like caged in a box and they're wondering what more could they be doing, I want to empower them and inspire them to explore outside the box and just see if that's a fit for them and maybe even create their own box. I mean, like it's up to you what your life looks like. And I think how you want to go against the status quo, what that looks like for you, because it's different for each person. I think as an entrepreneur, it's like, okay, it's creating my own business. It's helping my family have like the lifestyle that really fits us, where we can really interact well together. It's helping people in the community that are nearby and inspiring them to live like a more fit and healthy life. So there's a lot of different elements to it that I think go beyond what we think of. We think of, am I going to be an entrepreneur or be in an organization? But it's so much more than that, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And once again, you're speaking a brilliant message to a lot of people, in my audience who are working for companies. You just by nature sometimes of being the only woman in the room or being, more of I'll say a gender minority gives such a powerful perspective that sometimes it is hard for that status quo to give in and understand the beauty in that gift and how that is actually going to transform and help them think outside of the box and help everyone grow. So yeah, another great message. Thank you. So that does step into answers her call to greatness with skills and talents. What would those be for you? You have
This
many, so many.
uh,
Go check my LinkedIn profile, right?
I guess LinkedIn, the obvious is like LinkedIn. I think that is an area where I've definitely focused, I think, like my skills and really invested my time and energy into. And I feel like that's definitely a fun place to play. I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, there's so much to learn. I'm a little bit of a learnaholic. So that would probably fall into the category. Like I am just an obsessive learner. Like anytime I'm doing something, I'm always stacking it with learning something. So like if you looked at my computer right now, I have like a browser windows with like probably 5 or 6 different videos or master classes that I'm going to watch, while doing like my busy work. So it's like, I think for me, like, I think learning is such a driver and it is a skill, and being able to stack it and figure out your way of learning and absorbing new material is really important. Like some people are really good with the audio, like the audio or the audio and visual, like watching people's faces. So I think that's something that I have cultivated over time that I absolutely love, and is something that has also empowered me, I think, as in my work, in my business, in my career, to really be able to pick up on topics and run with them and learn new material and apply it, because I think the application is where a lot of us get stuck. Like we hear all of the information, we're like, but how do we actually do that? So I think there's something in there that I have been able to work on over time that's allowed me to like learn it. Okay, now how does it fit into my lifestyle? How does it fit into my business? Where does this actually fit? Is this something I want to table for later? So that's something that I guess would be like a skill or a talent. Let's see.
Well, once again,
Yeah.
I think you're talking to the choir, because even whenever you say that, I remember just kind of having a sense. And I think, definitely in my world, it was hard to kind of communicate what all goes on inside this head, especially when solving some major problems, right? So you talk about having, the browser open with 5 different tabs, and this is like how my day is even just getting started, right? Well, that was kind of like me too, especially with, once again, some of these big problems. It was like I had to step into them and I had to give myself that freedom that, oh, if I need to have 5 browsers open to like tickle my intellect to allow me to step into these really, really like heavy processing systems inside my brain. Like I've never talked about that with other people because like, people
I
don't,
know.
either people don't do what I do or you don't
Yes.
get to that level of conversation. So man, this is like great conversation, Mindy. So number 4 is works towards self-mastery, which is 10,000 hours in the same domain. 10,000 hours straight is a little over a year, 8 hours a day. That takes you to about a 5-year chunk. That's why experience at the 5-year mark, that gets to be interesting for people. And if you do it for 30 years at 1 hour a day, you'll get to 10,000 hours. So is there anything that's specific that you like focus on for that type of mastery or?
I would say weightlifting. That's something that is like, I know it's kind of outside the box. Weightlifting. Like to me, I remember it's probably back in 2006, 2008. I was a very young person. And I remember saying to myself, I really suck at this, and I didn't really know how to do it. But I said, when I'm looking down the road 10 years from now, I am going to still be showing up in the gym and I'm going to master this. And like, I am not naturally an athletic person. So for me to be able to get into, I think, weight training, it changed me fundamentally, I think, as a human from the inside out, from the outside in, I guess you would say, because you're working on your body and on your muscles. And so for me, that has
Ah,
been like a practice, and that feeds into, I think, my business and my drive for like health and nutrition. And it fuels me. I mean, I
yeah.
guess that's on another level. And I feel like if a lot of women, especially, I think having the mastery of I guess their power and their strength and whatever that looks like for you. Like not everyone's going to like fall in love with weightlifting. I did, and it's been like a staple to my life since that point. It's actually how I met my husband too. So, so it's
Oh,
like
I
a
didn't.
lot of beautiful things
Awesome. Awesome.
have stemmed from that. But I feel like the women that I have seen and really embrace that, the power that they exude from the inside out is just it's beautiful. It is very strong, and it is very empowering. So I feel like that's something that I continue to work on and something I see as like a lifelong practice and really something that's fun for me as well and helps me with surfing and doing all of the other
Oh,
things.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Man. 5 is has the freedom to explore her passion and purpose in life. How's that show up for you?
I feel like that shows up for me in a number of ways. I think just the way that my day flows. Like I think there's something beautiful about an ordinary day. And when I look at my ordinary days and I compare them to, different time periods in my life, I think, wow, my ordinary day is filled with passion and purpose every single day. And the way from the start of my morning to like the end of my day, there's purpose. Like every single thing that's on my calendar, everything that I put inside of my dream book, like all of the activities that I do in the day, they're all strategic, they're all very thoughtful, and they all lead to living out my what I call my massive transformative purpose. Other people would call it your MTP, which is kind of like alluding to what I was talking about before, which is creating content that inspires people to live their own lifestyle by design, however that looks. And so every single activity I do on my day, I think of that MTP. I read that every day and I say, okay, how do these activities align to that purpose and to that passion? And so for me, it's a very, I think it makes decision making easy in a way, very simple because it's like, okay, does this activity lead to that? Does this make the priority list for this purpose that I have? If not, what do I need to change? So it's definitely been like my guiding light. And it's taken years for me to figure out what that purpose was. I felt like I was like floating around and trying to figure it out. And you have to try a lot of things, I think, before you figure it out. And so if you're in that thrashing phase, it's like be patient with yourself. It gets better. You'll figure out what that purpose is, but keep going deeper, keep exploring, keep doing like self-development, personal development, reading good books that kind of trigger your brain and follow your curiosity. So I think for me, like following your passion and purpose is what am I curious about at any given time, and I will pursue that like with a vengeance. So anytime I'm like curious, my husband Jason laughs at me because he's like, "You are an immersive learner." Like if there's a topic that all of a sudden like sparks my curiosity, it's like expect Mindy to go for like 30 to 60 days really deep listening to every single podcast, book, or blog on that topic. Yes. And I
Mike,
think, yeah, I think those of
love
us
it.
that love to learn, I think that's like how we do it and explore those because what you're going to find is like some of those things are going to stick. Some of them you're like, okay, I learned it. I'm going to move on. And that's great. But all of that is going to tie into your massive transformative purpose in some way, shape, or form. So I think following curiosity is one of like the bedrocks of like how I live life and my days.
You are just totally blowing my mind right now. Massive transformative process, which obviously leads us to the show's evidence of transformation. But oh my gosh, Mindy. So one thing I do want to touch here is that's a very powerful, what I would call an unstoppable goal, a tool for achieving an unstoppable goal.
Mhm.
So I too work with my clients on the unstoppable goals because I think you have to have those along with SMART goals. SMART
Yep.
goals are typically, a little bit more shorter, obviously more tangible, time oriented, all those things. But I think if you're not, you know, touching on some kind of purpose or intangible part of you, I
Mhm.
think there's something missing.
Yeah.
So that's
Agree.
interesting that I've never heard of that. Is that something that you developed or how did you come about?
A great book, Stephen Kotler. And his book is called The Art of Impossible. Yes, The Art of Impossible. I read it at the beginning of this year. It was like the best book of the year. I was like, this is it. And he talks about like how to figure out what your massive transformative purpose is. And
Okay.
so I tied that in with another methodology I use called Lifebook, which is another fantastic program. And so I kind of blended the two of them together. And I'm like, now this is what I was looking for. This
Your
is
own
how I do life.
concoction.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wow. Man, this is awesome stuff. So I'll just touch back then on the last one is must earn notable accomplishments or achievements. What would you consider that to be for you in your life?
I think when I think of achievements, I guess I measure them a little differently than some. Like to me, an achievement is, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like the perfect day. So to me, it's like I get to live my perfect day like every single day of my life. Like who gets to do that? So to me, that is one of like the biggest achievements, and it's taking at least 10 years to get here, from when I envisioned it. And it's like, wow, I'm living my perfect day every single day. I mean, yes, there are speed bumps, yes, but the ultimate flow of the day is exactly what I was hoping for and set out to achieve. So to me, that is something that I consider like an achievement. I think also with my business and my family, like being able to relocate. I'm originally from like the Midwest, Chicagoland. Yes, I'm like cold Midwest, hardworking. Chicago's awesome. Like if you
Yeah.
love the city,
Yeah.
it is like the best city of the world. I'm just not a city person, and I don't like the cold. So I think being being able to move the family from Midwest to here with my business and my business as the backbone of that, and
Yeah.
give them this life that
Yeah.
it just fits our family so much better. Like everybody's happier. They get the beach life. The kids don't
Yeah.
know anything different. They just feel like little island
Oh.
kids.
And
Yeah.
just in
So
case our listeners don't know, you are in Hawaii.
yes, I'm on the North Shore of Oahu. So like best surfing in the world, like right down the street, all the surf competitions. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
epic. I will say, like if you like surfing, if you like island life, it is like the best of all the worlds.
Well, the best thing I can do is watch your social channels so I get a little glimpse of what it's like to be a surfer and to see the beach on a regular basis. And I love it. Love it. That's awesome. So what can you share about any current peace practices that you may have as a habit or anything that you do on the regular?
I would say one of the big things that I like to do is definitely journal. So I would say journaling is like huge for me, especially if I'm going through a tricky point or I have like the sticky situation that's just like stuck in my head and I can't work myself out of it. I feel like one of the best things for me to do is to journal it. And so that's a very big practice that I do. Also, sauna. Sauna is like another like biohacking. Sauna is like my one of my favorite things. Okay, you're
You said it the other day. Where did you even say it? And then right after that, I either heard something with some statistics, maybe it was a book I was listening to about how important sauna is like as a peace practice. And I was like, there's Mindy. She's got one.
huge. It's huge. And I have it in my living room. Like literally there's a sauna sitting in my living room and a gym is in my living room. So yes, we are those crazy kooky people. But it is amazing. Like my husband, I got him into it as well. So like we kind of each rotate and take turns. And I think there's something like very calming and peaceful like
Uh,
that comes like it affects your entire body. So I think for me that's also one of the really big ones that I do. And then yoga stretching
oh, you
for
yoga.
me. Yeah, so I love yoga. I like any type of like give me a cool stretching routine and I'm all over it. Because it just down regulates my nervous system. I'm like very type A. So for me, it's
Uh,
like, how can I, during my down times, I need to really bring it down in a healthy way. So I try to make sure that those are like healthy. So it's like, oh, I'm getting like a twofer. So I'm getting a yoga stretch and I'm having some peaceful time. Yep.
and you feel that it sounds like just the sense of feeling that is part of the important part of that practice.
I agree. Yes. It's that
Awesome.
it's that sense. And I think it's like the inner peace and calm and quiet, especially when you add some breath work, I think to the
That's
practice and you start, you're doing prana tempo breathing, you're doing box breathing. I'm not really as much into the Wim Hof. That one's a little more intense. But yeah, some type of breath work, I think paired
yeah.
with it, it really is good for the body, the brain, and the nervous system.
Yeah, that's been a new one for me. And it's interesting. It's got a lot of, long history, and there are a lot, obviously you're very well versed. There's a lot of different types for different reasons. And it certainly has a strong connection to your physiology
It
for
does. It
improvements.
does.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
cool. What can you share about the dreads?
The dreads. Yes, well, if you're the podcast, you can't see that I have dreadlocks. But yes, about a year ago, it was like last Labor Day, middle of the pandemic, I was looking at different hairstyles. So first of all, practical reasons. When you're surfing a lot and you have very tangly hair, you spend about 10 minutes after every surf session detangling your hair.
Oh, wasted
So
time, man.
it's so much
Wasted.
wasted time. So from a practical perspective, I'm like, okay, I've got to do something with my hair. So that kind of like started the process where I'm like, okay, what can I do? I'm like, okay, surfer, so you're Googling surfer hairstyles. I'm like, oh, dreadlocks. Ooh, dreadlocks. And so then, so that like initially like piqued my interest, like, okay, a low maintenance way to like deal with my hair in the surf. But what got me deeper into it was just realizing like the spirituality, like the little bit of woo woo, I think that goes into it as well, the patience that's involved. Like if you don't understand dreadlocks, especially for I'm
Yeah.
Caucasian. Yeah, so I'm Caucasian. My hair doesn't dread naturally. Like, other cultures like their hair will dread naturally and it looks beautiful, just free flowing. For us, there's a lot more patience that comes along with the process. I had very, very long hair. I was expecting my dreads to be very, very long. And they
I
ended
couldn't
up
believe
like
the pictures. I was like, oh my gosh, is that the same person?
super short. Yeah, so it's there was this process of letting go and letting what happened happen. And so for me, like there's been this process of since I moved to the island a few years ago, I really wanted to adapt more of a flow into my lifestyle and kind of let things be sometimes. And so for me, it was an acceptance practice. It was like, okay, I'm going to start the dreads. Okay, I did my thing, and then I'm going to let them form naturally. I'm not going to touch them. Like I don't do a ton of maintenance like a lot of other people will do to make them look perfect. To me, it's a process and just letting a little bit of wild. It's like let the wild out a little bit.
Yeah.
There's also like the spiritual elements in watching the hair change and shift. Like my connection to my hair, especially as a woman, has been different because it's very non-traditional. Like even here on the North Shore, like I've seen not even a handful, like less than 5 women that have dreadlocks. So it's not like a common thing here. You think, oh, everybody has dreads. No, it's not. So you do stand out in a way, but there's this spiritual connection. There was like this inner transformation that I wasn't expecting, but I had read about that people have in going through what they call locking, the process of locking your hair. And what that looks like on the inside, because every day your hair looks a little bit different, especially in the first couple of years, and you have to just kind of let it be, even though you're like, oh, it looks so bad over here. Like this one side just stands like straight out. Or people are like, look at you, they're like, what's up with your hair? When they don't know you're locking. So there's all of this that goes into it. Um, that
Oh, so it's
changes
not
you
just
and
personal.
changes.
It is these interactions with other humans and their reaction to you as you're going through a process.
Yes. So it is really powerful and is public. Like you can't hide it. Your hair is always there. And so it's like, and then there are a few people that appreciate it and they understand the process. And so when you connect with those people, you're like, oh, you totally get it. So there's like this instant bond and camaraderie that you have with people too. So I think from a business perspective, like the branding and marketing, it's like, oh yeah, you stand out. Like I don't know anybody else teaching LinkedIn that
Oh,
has dreadlocks.
I'm
You know what I
sure it
mean?
was part of why I was like, who is that? I,
With their hair.
I want to
That's
know
why.
that girl.
Well, for me, it was just it is the right hairstyle for me. I think at this point, it really expresses how I feel on the inside. And it's kind of like an outer showing of like the inner transformation that's been happening for me. So to me, it feels like I love them. They're super fun. I like touch them all the time.
Oh,
Like
do you?
I do. And it's really grounding. Like you just kind of like, and you know what each one
Oh,
feels like,
that's
so you
so
kind of like,
funny.
and you got to
Because I'm a
wait till like,
twirler. I'm constantly
yeah.
touching my hair.
Oh, the dreadlocks, yeah, I know. It's like you can like twirl them and touch them all the time. So yeah, I think it's just the culmination of that. It's weird because it's like been over the past year, and that's where I have felt I think that the most personal and inner transformation happened over the past year. So I think it's just kind of like an outward expression of like what's been going on the inside.
That is the coolest story. Mindi, it has been such a joy to have you on the show and to talk about you as an everyday heroine. What's going on in your world? How can people get in touch with you? What would you love to share with us?
Sure. If you like LinkedIn stuff, then connect with me. Like just reach out, send me a connection invitation on LinkedIn. Just Mindi Rosser. It's Mindy with an I. And then if you like Hawaii stuff, if you're like, oh, I want to see more surfing, crazy kids, beaches, all that stuff, follow me on Instagram because that's where I post like all the fun stuff. So it's Mindy R. Rosser. If you're interested, I do a program called the LinkedIn Accelerator, which takes people from 0 to 60 on their LinkedIn profile and building their network. And the next one is opening in October, but I run them all the time. So if you want to get on the wait list, Maria will probably have a link. You can just check out that link to get on the wait list for when the next one opens. But it's anything related to LinkedIn, marketing, dreadlocks, Hawaii. Just reach out. Let me know. I love to talk all of them.
Spiritual transformations.
Spiritual transformation, all of it.
Yes, absolutely. I will have all of the links in the show notes to make sure it's easy to get in touch with Mindi Rosser. Thank you so much for having you or for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.